Well, hello everyone. And today I am joined by someone I am so excited to introduce you to welcome Chigo.
Hello. Hey, how's
So,
it going?
really good. For those who don't know Chigo, he is a walking, talking epitome of diversity, equity, and inclusion. When I met him 2 years ago, we met at Work Human in Austin. We had a fabulous conversation. One of the first faces I saw this year was Chigo with Yvonne, who we both know as well. And at that point, I said, I really, really want you to come and talk at Disrupt HR Dallas. And the rest, they say, is history. But Chigo, why don't you introduce yourself?
Wow, sure. I mean, your introduction was amazing. I don't know how I can top that. Anyway, my name is Chigo Ahunanya, and I work in diversity, equity, inclusion, specifically focused on strategy and engagement. I've been doing this for about 5 years now, but honestly, with DEI, it's really like a whole life's experience being brought into a culmination of a career. So I've been working in DEI for 5 years. I've been practicing it for, I'm not gonna put my age out there, but a couple of decades now.
Now you're making me feel old. And I think that's one of the things I really love about you. One of the many things is so many people I feel, and this is quite controversial, talk about it, but not really have lived it. And just
Mm.
even some of your throwaway comments, it just they always inspire me because at no point have you ever berated or pointed a finger or suggested that people can do better. You always come from an angle of inspiration and patience. And I love
Mm.
that.
That's thank you. You should tell my kids that. They'd be very happy to hear that. I'm gonna clip this for the future. But yeah, I think it's so important to really meet people where they're at. If you want, even when you want to bring someone up, you have to meet them where they're at and understand that they have their individual experiences, right? We all have our individual experiences, and as we talk about people's experience, everyone has an experience in DEI. It's really positionality. It depends on where you are at the time, but if you really reflect and introspect, we've all had experiences around certain these topics specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. And something you said that I thought was brilliant before we came on air is, no one set out, very few people probably set out to
Mhm.
do HR, and very few people would have set out to do DEI and the great work you're doing.
Yeah.
How Tell us a bit more about how you got into your field now, um, and what it means to you, because that's again really inspirational when I hear you talk.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put it in a nutshell because you could be here forever. I know we don't have that much time, so I think for me, so what I had studied was healthcare administration. I come from a medical family. I always was pressured. If you have an immigrant family, you're gonna become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Engineer, I tried, not gonna happen. Lawyer, my parents like, we'd rather you be a doctor. Unfortunately, I'm not a doctor, but as I got my first job working in a healthcare organization, I realized that, especially with quality of care, we always think of quality of care of making sure everything is clean, making sure everything happens on time. But we don't realize it's from the minute the person walks into the door, that
Mm.
first smile at the front door. Like, how do people feel? And one of my first jobs was at least when I moved to the US, was as a medical secretary. And my job was people come in through the door, they're not happy. No one's going to the doctor like clicking their heels. Like people are not in a good mood. And my job was, how do I make this person feel like they're in good hands? And from there, a couple of experiences happened in my life. My father passed away, and he always had this goal of working in humanitarian aid once he retires. And I was just like, you know what, this is interesting. Let me look up this organization on my flight back from his funeral, by the way.
Oh
And
my days, I didn't know that.
yeah, it's a great, I will be saying this story forever. And I looked up the organization I'm currently working for, and a job opened up. And I was like, you know what, let's try it, whatever. I look back on it, my CV was horrible. I don't know how they hired me, but I got an interview, and recently I rewatched the movie The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
Yeah.
And I remember that when he gets to the interview, he gets there in clothes stained in paint. He did everything to get to this interview. And I remember my interview was the same. I was working at this other place and I had half an hour to go across Manhattan. I
Wow.
was doing, jumped into a taxi, changed my suit in the taxi, get to the place where I'm having the interview, sweating at the front door. I'm like wiping the sweat. And yeah, I got given an opportunity to start working for this organization. And honestly, I don't think I was qualified. I think the person who hired me, um, I'll take it back. No, I wasn't qualified. On paper, I didn't have what they were asking for. But the person who interviewed me really saw beyond just the papers and saw the person I
Mm.
was. I did have some experience in the job, and they really hired me for who I am and my potential to learn and grow. And I've been there for about 8 years now. I'm in my fourth position there. I've been growing every 2 years, which is great. And the rest is history. But in terms of DEI, honestly, it was about bringing in my personal experiences. I think you know I was born and raised in Malta, small island. Everyone look it up on Google. It's an amazing place. You should visit. And I was one of the few, maybe at one point the only black person in my school.
Wow.
And there wasn't that much discrimination. Actually, people were pretty nice, but you always felt othered. And that gave me the opportunity to really look at things from an outside perspective. And my goal throughout my career is that I never want anyone to feel othered.
Mm.
Even when sometimes they push the envelope on being other, but you always have to include them because they bring something valuable to the table. And somehow I'm fortunate enough to be in a career where I can do that for people.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look back at the career that you started when you joined your current
Mhm.
organization, how has how has that evolved and what are you most proud of?
Wow, how it's evolved. So it has evolved from me being hired as, and I'm not afraid to say it, I always say, being hired as an assistant, doing the photocopies, booking some flights, taking some notes. And it will be, it's really surprising to me. And I always look back and realize how important it is to really think about people first.
Mm.
One of my first kind of moves was someone who I met during a work event. And I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what their position was, but I just sat down with them and talked to them for maybe half an hour or something. I didn't make much of it. I was like, oh, that's a cool person. And I got back to doing what I was doing. And then later on, I found out she was a leader and she had her own team. And when an opening came up, I decided to apply. And she really understood, at least I think, I can't speak for her, but she really understood the kind of person I was and what I wanted to bring to the organization. And the rest is history. Over my career, it's been just meeting people, like sharing my vision, which actually is really hard for me sometimes because I don't want to seem like I'm this visionary person. I'm just sharing my opinion. And people really seeing the value. It's so important that people see the value in you. And it usually comes from you first giving them value. I usually go into a conversation giving the other person value and they understand that I value them. And it's just reciprocal. People usually automatically value you. And that's how I've grown throughout my career.
I love that. And you know, and I think you and I are very similar because I started off in a typing pool and yeah, and I kind of worked up from there and I was the number two, the number one PA for one of the big wigs at Goldman Sachs. And
Hmm.
from there I moved to Sky. And again I was, you know, one of the two assistants to the CEO. Now, the CEO at Sky, whilst he had a bark, we all loved him. You know, it was our entire lives. But we all loved him. You know, he was. he was an inspiration and very hard to work for all in one, which you'd expect at that level. But the one thing I remember, Chico, is particularly when we were working late, which was a lot, every once in a while, my boss said, just get my driver to drop you off. So because of who he was, you know, the big
Mhm.
black 500 SEL, you know, all singing, all dancing car. So there I was, early 20s, a lot thinner and slimmer than I am today, or, you know, corporate dress and the whole thing. And Paul, the chauffeur, would literally drop me off and say, "Oh, you know, I'll open the door for you." I said, "Paul, don't be daft. I'll get out." He said, "No, it's a bit of a laugh." Anyway, so and the amount of, and I suppose it's a different scenario, but what always fascinated me was then there were a lot of guys who, you know, kind of walked towards me in terms of, you know, who is she? And I used to just, my little devil horns would come up, and I'd say, "I'm just a secretary," because that's exactly what I was. I was just a secretary.
Hmm.
And the amount of people, Chico, who literally turned tail and walked away
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
hilarious. And, you know, it was really funny.
Yeah, I think sometimes and I'm not saying that positions aren't important. People work very hard to get where they are. Let's not even go down that route.
I agree.
But sometimes we miss people because we're so focused on what they are rather than who they are.
Yeah,
And I think that's something, especially in DEI, that it's really important to focus on that. Forget what they are. That they've worked for it, that's fine. But who are they at the core, and what do they bring to you and your life and your organization?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And Chico, you have built up a lovely team, and I've had the privilege to meet one of your team members when we were at Work Human.
yeah,
How do you find such a fabulous people? Because the team person you brought she was sassy, she was fun, she was curious, she was always asking questions.
yeah.
She was a sheer
No,
joy.
you know what? I'm not even gonna put it this out. I'm gonna say her name, Steph Gales. That's her. Amazing, amazing at
And she
engagement.
is.
I think a lot of it is, especially in building a team, it's about I mean, first they have to be interested in the
Yeah,
vision. That's a good start. So it's good to explain the vision and really looking at them and asking them questions that aren't necessarily about the job they're going to do, but where do they see themselves going? What would they like? What difference would they like to make? We have learning and development. Our head of learning and development always asks people. Everyone's always like, "I want to be this. I want to do this. This is the position I want." But you should be asking yourself, what kind of difference do you want to make?
yeah,
What do you want to do? Not what do you want to be? And from there you can slowly figure out like where your career will take you. And I wish I had asked myself that question earlier in life. I think
yeah,
my
me
path would have
too.
been a lot smoother. But yeah, I mean, I'll say her name again. Steph is all about how do we get people involved, engaged, and feel a sense of belonging in everything we're doing. I think many times in big companies, there's a lot of top down happening, which of course is the way it is. But how do we make sure that we translate what the people at the top want to a way that the people at the grassroots or in other
Mm,
positions can really align with it and also have some input in it. We kind of serve as the middle ground. We want to hear what the people have to say while also supporting our leadership to really find the right way in the middle that we can create the culture together rather than the culture being imposed on you.
yeah.
So yeah, I give her kudos for that. I'm very fortunate to have her on my team. Yeah.
She's brilliant. And what's your, and I'm not necessarily talking about the organization you're with, but what's your hopes and dreams for the outcome of the work you're doing?
Yeah, and I can be very clear. I work in the medical humanitarian aid field. If you look me up on LinkedIn, you know exactly which organization I work for. And for me, it's more about, especially in humanitarian aid, over history, there's been this feeling of almost like neo-colonization, where it's like, I mean, I hate to say this, but we all grew up with it. The Oxfam adverts with a child
True.
in not such a good state and being really advertised as, please come and save these people. And my goal is that we arrive at the point where we're not saving people, but empowering people. Because honestly, every single person with the right push and with the right empowerment can be can empower themselves. They could be strong and help themselves in their situation. And as a humanitarian aid organization, I think that's what we try and do. We hire locally and we have to empower locally, right? Because who better to help people than your neighbor or your family or someone who knows you, right?
Yeah.
And essentially, that's the key, empowering people.
On your travels, I'd love to, because you meet some really interesting people that none of us would have the
Yeah.
privilege to meet. Are you able to share, without giving too much away, just some of the stories of some of the people that you've met and the impact that this empowerment's had on their lives?
Yeah, I can share. I mean, I think these stories are common throughout the field,
Yeah.
throughout the humanitarian aid field. There are some people who, and I'll put it out there. One of our, and this is quite sad. One of our recent board members just passed away,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and he started from being a patient. He was a patient who unfortunately was in a context that was at war and suffered some injuries from it. And from being a patient, he became a patient navigator. He felt empowered. He felt so empowered by what we did that he eventually moved to the US, got his degree, got his master's. He walked for his PhD about a week before he passed away. He was in hospice and he walked for his PhD. And for me, it's like stories like that are why we do the work we do,
Mm,
because you are empowering people. And I will say empowering like a million times throughout this, because that's what it's really about. It's not about necessarily healing people or treating people, but it's about empowering people to be the person they were meant to be. So that is, to me, that's one of the most captivating stories that I've been fortunate enough to be part of, because I also knew who he was and I worked with him. But those are the kind of stories you want to hear. You don't want to hear the stories about the person who's suffering and their family is suffering, but you want to hear how they got past that with the right support. And yeah, that's just one of many stories. I think we were talking earlier. There's a story every day. You just have to look out for it. But there's inspiring stories that come across you every single day. It's just about keeping your eyes open.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Totally. And let's kind of just give people a little flavor of what's coming in Dallas.
Okay. Okay.
What are you prepared to share, please, about your talk?
What I'm prepared to share, I will share what we call the cliff notes. So my talk is really about people over paper. I think many times when we're looking to hire someone, we look at their qualifications, and that's very important. They worked very hard for those qualifications, but what can we look at beyond that, as in the person? I think a lot of times in HR, what we do is we focus on the qualifications, but we don't focus on the competencies. An
Yes.
example which I like to use is we all have not we all, a lot of people have a driver's license, but can they parallel park? Just because you have the qualification doesn't mean that you can parallel park. At least I'll speak for the US because I've seen some atrocious parallel parking. Not everyone can parallel park. And in a way, I think about it like AI is almost like the backup camera, right? So it's giving you guidelines and it can help you park. But if you don't understand the basic concept, you're still going to suck at parking, backup camera or not. So, how do we look at the competencies of people? How do we look at not just where they went to school and what qualifications they have, but what are the experiences? Who is this person and how can they elevate our organization? So I'm
Mm,
talking about that. And also, if you think about it, there's many people who, for many different reasons, might have been out of work. Maybe they were taking care
yeah.
of an elderly family member or a child. When they come back to work and they see those qualifications, I mean, I've looked at some of the qualifications for jobs at the organization I work at. I'm like, I don't even know if I would qualify for my own job. These qualifications are crazy. But if you look at the competencies, what are we looking to hire? What are the things we want you to be competent at doing? And also providing them with some metrics like success factors. Job descriptions are a checklist of this is what you need to do.
Mm,
But do we always share what do you need to do to be successful at your job? Wouldn't it be a lot more clearer for you in your growth if your boss says, if you want to succeed at this job, this is what you need to do. This is what you
love
need to
that.
achieve. So I'm going to be touching upon that and how that all brings in together to creating a culture of belonging at any organization you're working on, or even any team. It even works on a football team. I play for a football team, and those same those same things apply to sports too.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
There's another point here, though, isn't there? And as we were talking, and again, we were talking about it before we went live. You know, you often kind of look at your kids or look at an early generation, and who do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And I think that's an evolution that goes on in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. That's a constant evolution. And how do we as organizations, when we're working with our teams,
Hmm.
incorporate that? I don't think we do enough about that.
Hmm. I think with that, I think there's something that's often not focused on. That's something that I didn't really come to realize till later on. The value of mentoring and coaching.
Yeah, totally.
I think people, even though they think they know the way they want to go, it changes. Life happens. And as we were talking earlier, I thought I wanted to do something that turned into something else. As I had life experiences and I grew, I started understanding a bit more what my core is and what I want to do. And many times we have a lot of managers who will manage the situation right
Yeah.
now, but what if we trained our managers to be leaders? I mean, this is I think it's a popular opinion that many people don't necessarily leave the job, but they leave the situation. Maybe they didn't have
Yeah.
the right management. So I think it's so key for us to make sure that we train our managers right to be people leaders, not just managers. And that's when you really bring out the best in people and can help guide people through this process that they're going through. I often say that as much as I love my team, if you guys keep going and grow and become leaders, I can say, hey, I helped them at some point. Being a leader of leaders is a lot better than being a leader of followers. So I think that's what we need to that's what we need to focus on, being a leader of leaders.
I love that. And Chico, when you look at your career, who have
Hmm.
been your mentors that have had a real impact on you?
Am I allowed to drop names here? Because
You are totally allowed to drop
I
names.
believe in dropping names for every single thing. My mentors have been my parents, definitely my parents. I grew up in a no nonsense family with some humor, a sprinkle of humor there, but mostly not no nonsense. And earlier on in so I didn't go straight to university. I did a leadership training program for a few years that had me traveling all over the world,
Oh,
and
wow.
I had a couple of leaders who really just went into me, and they would be like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And when I finally got the courage, I was like, why did you put me through all that? I hated you. And they expressed that they saw the potential in me. I still was a bit salty about it, but I came out of it being like, listen, you know what, I really got tough from that, and I really understood what it takes to be a leader, and how sometimes, even though you want to be liked, you have to do what's best for the
Mm.
person, as long as you always share that you're doing it because it's the best for them and there's a communication. Another person was probably someone in my current organization. I'll give her kudos, Catherine Anderson, for actually pushing me a bit to be like, hey, challenge yourself. And probably the biggest influence in my life is my current director. I'm putting names out there, Ali James. Amazing. Just like you did, Sam. We were having that conversation, and I never thought about public speaking. And you were like, your voice needs to be heard. And I was like, yeah, okay. All right. My voice needs to
That's
be heard. I'll
exactly
see.
what you did. You're like, yeah.
Yeah,
See you
okay.
next year,
Keep
Sam's like,
moving. Yeah. And you kept pushing and you said, hey, your voice needs to be heard. Come and speak. Like, please, you should try speaking more, not just speaking at little meetings or having a chat here and there at the happy hour, but actually expressing your vision. And I think Ali did that for me. Ali James, she saw the potential and she was like, walk in your power. And she keeps saying that. She keeps reminding me that till this day. Because sometimes I feel like being a leader is about elevating people, but I'm kind of a servant leader sometimes where I'm like, you know what? I leave it open to you and I'll just guide you here and there. But sometimes, and this is something I learned yesterday, talk about learning lessons, you have people want you to be a bit prescriptive. They want you to kind of hold their hand through the process.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've learned, especially in the last few years. And Ali has been a big proponent to that. I don't think I would even be on this call right now if it wasn't for her. So I give her kudos right there.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how people who've shaped us, and it's typically those who have really pushed us because they've seen something in us,
Yeah.
to make that difference to. And I often talk about, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because if you're comfortable every day,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably, to Ali's point, you're not walking in your power. You're walking in your shadow because you're comfortable there.
Yeah. The shadows are really comfortable, actually. Like if it's a really sunny day and it's beating down on you, you want to be in the shadows. But at the end of the
Right?
day, you don't get that vitamin D. We all need some vitamin D to grow healthy. So I see it in the same way. Sorry, I love making examples and metaphors, but that's the way I see it. You can't stay in the shadow
Yeah.
the whole time. It gets cold in the shadow.
It certainly does. It certainly does. And where do you think your line of work and what you're doing now, where would you like it to be in, say, a couple of years' time? Because,
Hmm.
I know a bit about what you do from our conversations and chats off air,
Yeah.
and I'd love you to talk more about what you can talk about in that regard as well.
Yeah, I will start with a statement. My goal is that in 10 years, I hope they don't need people like me. They don't need a DEI person. Sorry to all the DEI people out there. I am fully committed, but I hope that we arrive at the point where DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging is just permeating through everywhere. And I feel like where I work now, my job is made so much easier because I'm not the sole person who's in charge of it. It's really a collaborative effort where leadership are in on it. We're all working together and we're all working at creating this culture of belonging, this culture of inclusivity. So that's really my goal. I mean, I have so many examples where someone asked me, oh, did you do that? I was like, actually, I did not. I did consult on it, but that person took ownership and they're creating that culture themselves. So that's my hope for the next 10 years. Of course, maybe we'll have a DEI person, but they're really there just to make sure that everyone is aligned and there aren't silos, but everyone is doing it themselves in their
Yeah.
teams. Yeah.
Yeah. And just by its very nature, I love the kind of the broadness and
Mhm.
the breadth with which you're talking, because it's interesting. I'm seeing more and more ageism and coming back to the office, and all of those things which can get quite divisive and
Mm.
cause a lot of angst. And I think there's a way around a lot of these things, which is okay. Well, let's find, to your point, a way to empower rather than put really rigid guardrails in place, because that's how we've always done it, and we want to go back.
Mm.
That's the phrase. When I hear it, for me, I always feel is a sign of failure. I want to go
Mm.
back to that. Why? Because I was always brought up, and I remember one of my parents saying to me when I was young, "You never look back." And I said, "Well," and I always, from a young age, it's always forwards,
Mm.
because you went forward in that direction for a reason. If you go back, you're trying to create something that's no longer there.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think history are there to serve as lessons. And there's a reason
Definitely.
why it's history. I think especially with what you're talking about right now, and this is my opinion, I'll put it out there, it's my opinion. I am more than happy to have a conversation with someone who might disagree or wants to add on to my opinion, because I'm always open to learning too. But throughout throughout my life, I've realized that the people who are, or at least now it's getting a bit better, but the people who get the most credit are the people who are able to find
Yeah.
what's wrong with this, what's wrong with that. The people are the most critical, and I don't think enough credit is given to the people who can find the good things, who can
Yeah.
find the positives in a situation and work with that. It's getting a lot better as human beings. We're evolving, but we still have a long way to go. And
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about ageism, I I'm a millennial, so I sit in between the older generation and Gen Z. And one thing I will say is there's positives to both. If only we would take the time to listen and figure out how we can meet midway or collaborate. Everyone wants to be in their safe zone. But honestly, nowadays it's all about adaptability. Someone shared a book with me recently. I'll say another name because I love dropping names. Sonia Brown. Every time I meet her, she gives me a book. I think she's going to be speaking at the Disrupt HR sometime soon, so everyone should check that
Mhm.
out. But she always gives me a book, and the most recent book she gave me was about adaptability quotient. And we talk about IQ, we talk about EQ, but being able to adapt is so important. The people who make it, the people who stand the test of time, are the people who are adaptable. And if you can't adapt, you just fade away. And I
I
think anyone listening
Yes,
to this can agree.
I completely agree. And look at the role I started out with. I was one
Hmm.
of two PAs twice for
Yeah,
really big wig individuals. Those kind of roles just don't exist anymore.
no,
And if they do, they're for a very elite few,
yeah.
because they're just not needed.
Yeah. No, you look at the most successful people. I mean, I like watching interviews from people who are highly successful and they have failed so many times, but the
Yeah.
ability to adapt. Okay, I got this wrong. How do I adapt to the current situation? That's what creates success. At least that's my view and the view of millions of people around the world. So, of course, the core should stay the same, but your core should be able to adapt. And if your core cannot adapt, maybe that's not the place for you, but you should find a place that's good for you and a place where the adaptations that happen you can handle. And it sounds really harsh, but it's not really harsh. It's really trying to be the best person that you can be, finding a place where you feel like you belong.
I think there's that, and there's also that point of, and I said this on another one of these episodes that we did. Gosh, it must have been about 15, 20 years ago. I kind of almost got over myself, and I would be embarrassed in meetings when I'd say that I'm really sorry, I don't understand that, or I really need you to treat me like an idiot because sorry, I'm just not understanding it. Um,
Yeah,
and the amount of times that after a meeting, there'd be that awkward silence, and you kind of see people, shuffling around in their seats, kind of going, "Oh, Sam's asking questions again." And then people afterwards would come up to me and say, "Do you know what? Thank goodness you asked that question. I didn't have a clue." And it's like, well, why didn't you ask? Because I didn't want to look stupid. So what would you have done about that? Well, I'd have kind of come out and figured it out. Yeah, but what if you'd figured it out wrong?
yeah. That is such a great example. You triggered something in me, but that's such a great. I was recently facilitating a workshop, and at the beginning of the workshop, I said there's no such thing as stupid questions. We've all heard that before, but I gave an example. How many times when you were younger, you were in class and you had the question, but you were too embarrassed to ask it? Then
Yeah.
someone else raised their hand and asked it, and the teacher's like, "Oh my God, that you are so brilliant! Thank you for asking that question." And you're there like, I had that question too, but you
Yeah.
didn't have the courage to ask it. And it also triggered another thing in me. Like whenever I speak, I try to be as simple as possible. I know some people like to use very eloquent, big words, and I respect that. But especially when you're trying to create a sense of inclusivity and belonging, try and keep it as simple as possible because you want everyone on board. You want everyone to understand. I sometimes struggle with elitism, I must admit. And when I feel like something is being a bit elitist, I just jump in and try and disrupt it a bit. It's like, hey, 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 there's some people over here who also need to understand if you want to get this right. So I completely agree with asking questions. So important. Always ask
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, and I think HR is we're very good with the jargon and the acronyms
Yeah.
and that causes confusion. And again, because people won't ask or they won't challenge. I remember I had another role where I was always told that I had poor judgment, and I wasn't. And my challenge back was always how I judge is different to how you judge.
Mm. Word spoken. Yeah, I think that's so important. I think I mentioned it earlier, but understanding that we're all different. I've had some. I love tough conversations. By the way, that's why I always invite people to ask me questions. Like, oh, you want to have this? Let's do it right now. I don't mind. Let's have a tough conversation because I know I'm going to learn something from it. Sometimes I'll hear something that I definitely do not agree with, or I think I don't agree with. And I could just leave it at that and be like, you know what, me and this person are not on the same page. But what I like to do is ask questions. Hey, what did you mean by that? And just to let you know, I'm just being open here. When you said that, this is the feeling I got. Was that the feeling you were trying to instill? And the amount of situations I've diffused in that way. They're like, oh my God. No, I didn't want you to feel that way. Maybe I was a bit frustrated. That's why I said that. And this goes beyond work. This is like relationships and everything. We sometimes don't want to ask questions because we're so worked up. But sometimes just asking that question, like, hey, is that what you meant? I just want to make sure. And oftentimes we realize that maybe there was a misunderstanding there. Sometimes there isn't, but sometimes there's a misunderstanding. And the fact that you gave that person the benefit of the doubt, the fact that you bothered to be interested in that person creates that bond that sometimes they're the best bonds ever. Some of my best friends now I've had some of the biggest arguments with in the beginning. And then we realize that we're all going for the same goal, but from
Yeah,
different perspectives.
I love that, and it's funny, isn't it? For me, I'll often say, "Oh, that's really interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that way. Tell me more."
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Yeah.
agree with you. Obviously no one's going to agree with someone 100%, but actually, to your point earlier, so much of this is about a learning. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. I
Mm.
didn't appreciate that. And often say, particularly my line of work and what I do, the second I'm no longer curious about people and I'm not asking questions and I think I've arrived, I mean, what does that mean anyway? Don't get me started on that. Um,
Yeah.
give it up,
Yeah.
right? Just give it up. But that's my prejudices and those are my filters.
Yeah.
I think there's curiosity and constantly being curious keeps us younger, it keeps us inspired, and just keeps us going.
Yeah, I mean, I was recently at a summit, and the MC at the summit said something so interesting, and a couple of us like, oh, we were there, and we're supposed to be not supposed to be. We are experts. Let me correct that. And this person said, nobody here is an expert. We are specialists. If anything, we should be experts at asking questions to learn more. You never know everything, but you're a specialist in finding the answer. So always be curious. And there's nothing wrong with that. Knowing everything is kind of boring.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I love that. And so, did you hear Trevor Noah at the end of Work Human when he was?
I, I did hear, but I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm going to need to watch a recording because I was a bit starstruck. So at one point, I realized I had spaced out for about 5 minutes. And I was like, I need to watch the recording because I was just staring at Trevor Noah. So yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, he talks about being a chief. Now I'm rubbish with titles because that's not my thing.
I remember this part.
Chief Curious.
Yeah,
Chief,
Chief question something. His job was to ask questions.
yes, Chief Question or Chief Curiosity Officer or
Yeah,
something like
something
that.
like that. Yeah.
And I thought I freaking love that. I love that kind of job, which is, how does that work? Why are you doing that? Tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When he said that, I was like, I think we all need a chief curiosity person on each team, because sometimes we're just rambling off and someone's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? And it just helps us to really be able to vocalize and say what we're actually doing. And it actually becomes clearer to us. I often write what I'm saying sometimes, and people are
Oh,
like,
do
why are you
you?
writing it? Yeah, I'm one of those. Sometimes I'm writing exact as I'm speaking, and people are like, why are you writing? I'm writing what I'm saying to make sure that it makes sense, because for some reason on paper it clarifies for me that what I'm saying is right.
Oh, I love that. I have to slow it. I'm a parallel thinker, so I might kind of
Mhm.
go all over the place. I'll start to write, and then I think it's good, and then I'd have missed a whole load of words out because I'm already so. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm full of. And when I wrote my book a couple of years ago, I really had to slow my roll and think about it as I was doing it.
that'll do it. Especially when you're writing something for the general public, you have to think they're not in my head right now. I need to
Yeah,
really explain this and take my time to think about this. Yeah.
yeah. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
No, but I did recently find my journal from when I was probably 18 years old. When I first left Malta, because I'm from Malta, I started writing a journal, and I look back on it. First of all, terrible writing. I don't know what I don't know what that was, but it just brought back so many memories. And a friend of mine recently told me, like, you should keep those journals and compile them, because one day someone, maybe not the general public, but someone in your family is going to want to know more about you and your
Yeah,
crazy experiences. Because I have stories for everything. I have an anecdote about almost everything, and it's important to share that with the world, or at least
yeah.
with your family.
Oh, yeah. It's. I remember I kept, gosh, I kept daily diaries for 4 or 5 years. And then whenever I went, I would get postcards and I'd put them in there. Anyway,
Okay.
in a fit of peak sort of late teens, I threw them all out, and they're now lost. And I often think, what a stupid thing to have done. What I have done, however, is we were at one of those country fairs years ago when I was a kid, and we went with the school, and we all had to go round and go to the different stands and collect
Yeah.
stickers, say we'd been there. And I got this little multicolored notebook.
Okay.
So I must have been 8 or 9. And I got home and I went through my library and I wrote down every single book I read. And then I inserted new little pages and I stuck them in with sellotape. And 11 billion years later, I still have that and I still follow the same process. And that little book is probably the most precious thing I have in my possession.
Yeah, no, I mean that is, it's so important to have these journals, have these books, and look back. I lived in Germany maybe about, ooh, I'm aging myself here, maybe about 18 years ago,
Wow.
and I had a friend who told us to write a letter to yourself in 10 years, and I will mail it to you in 10 years.
Oh,
And I completely forgot about that letter. I moved to the US and I received a letter in the mail one day. And I kid you not, young me predicted everything that was going to happen and even gave myself advice. I gave myself advice in that letter, and it
oh
was
my
just what I
days.
needed when I opened the letter. The letter was kind of like, I hope you're not still doing this. I hope you're doing this. I hope, and I was like, oh my God, I need to keep be accountable. I need to do this. And it's so important to be able to look back. I think people, and I know in the earlier we said, oh, you shouldn't look back. Well, you should look back. You just shouldn't repeat the same mistakes. As I said,
Well
looking back
said,
is a
actually.
lesson.
Well said.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a lesson, but it's, you should really take the good out of it. Make sure you don't repeat things. We're all guilty of a pattern that we've kept repeating on and on. It's important that we
True.
look back to understand that we don't want to be there anymore.
So true. Chico, what did you do with that letter?
I don't know where it is now. It might be an insert in my journal. And just like you, I had postcards that I stuck from everywhere I
Did
traveled to
you?
throughout it. Yes, it's a whole thing. And when I didn't have a postcard, I'd find a local magazine or a local newspaper, and I'd cut out the date and stick it. It was a whole thing.
I
I don't know. I don't know if I would do it now. I think right now my journal is my social media pictures. That's as far as my journal goes. I need to pick that up again.
Do you know, it's really interesting because, yeah, for social media and everything else, and
Hmm.
we're certainly with what I do and everything else, you're forever taking photographs and videos and everything else. But personally, I always take a lot of videos of moments and photographs of moments, and I've got thousands of family and friends, and I love it when it pops up. I often
Yeah,
think, gosh, what would I do without that? And it's all backed up in the cloud, and you think, well, what happens if that goes? Because you couldn't fill a photo album, right? Because you'd need a storage unit, pretty much.
yeah, no, definitely. And you know what's funny? I'm gonna go back to HR on that because I have I have this thing which I really need to improve on. I never deleted emails throughout my whole time at this organization. So I have 8 years of email. I'm sorry, IT. They have to deal with my inbox when it gets full. And sometimes I look back at old emails and I was like, oh, I was so naive. Or maybe, oh, I can't believe how far I've come, even in the tone of how you send emails. And I
Yeah,
think it's so important as we do that, as you progress as an organization, as you progress as a professional, to look back. Where were we? I recently had
yeah,
to give a presentation about the progression that we've had in DEI over the last few years. And as you're working and you're busy and you're doing everything, you're busy saying, I could do this better. But then you look back and you're like, oh my God, we have done so much and there's been so much improvement over time. So I think it's so important to always remember history. It's there for you and it's there to remind you of how far you've come.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's definitely I mean I don't like calling it HR because human resources feels like it's such a technical thing. But when we talk about people and culture, because that's what we call it, when we talk about people, it's so important to remember where you're coming from.
yeah,
Because once you forget that, you'll make the same mistakes.
yeah. I like how you frame that, actually, and I think that's you framed it perfectly. It's about not repeating the same mistakes and
Hmm.
continuing with that evolution. So yeah, I really like that. I've never thought about it that way.
I've had to think about it that way a couple of times because there's been some repetitions, and I'm like, how many times am I gonna do this? Let me look at what I should, what I shouldn't do. I'm an experiential learner. Sometimes I just need to experience it to really learn the lesson.
Yeah, me too. What Laura said, it's so interesting to look back and see how far you've come. Really enjoying the stories. Thank you,
Thank you.
Laura. I appreciate that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's and I do look back at some of those things, and I look back at early 20s and think thoroughly obnoxious.
Listen,
It was only like 30s and 40s that I think my own evolution really occurred through some really horrific things happening,
hmm,
and turning from a fighter to, okay, I really need to stop fighting my own shadow now. It'll still come out, um,
yeah.
but it's directive now at the right time and never to hurt anyone. And I think, I grew up and I had a very successful father who
Hmm,
a lot of the time felt that a fear-based leadership was good because they were all men, and it was
hmm,
only after that, now I'm married to my husband, after many bad things, as happening to me.
hmm,
He's a military guy. He's grew up in Missouri as a farmer. He's as masculine as you like, but it's not. I've learned through so much through seeing someone equally is, and probably even more masculine,
hmm.
and how he handles things. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, you're opening a box there. We could talk about
I know.
masculinity ad nauseum, but we're gonna save that for another time. But I will say that it's it's just it's again looking back and making sure you don't make the same mistakes.
Totally.
Looking back and learning lessons is so important. And honestly, if there was a takeaway that I would take from our conversation, because I'm gonna take notes after this and see what I learned, is really like just looking back and using it as a lesson. I think our 20s, you were saying that you were obnoxious in your 20s. I don't know about that. My 20s, oh, I don't even want to think about my 20s, because in your 20s, you're fresh out of uni or fresh out of sixth form, and you always have, not everyone, but a lot of people have a group of friends that kind of allows you to distract yourself. You're starting a
Very good.
career, you've got all these distractions. But eventually, as you get older, people have families. You still have friends, but your friends aren't your main focus. Your career isn't your main focus. All of a sudden, your happiness is your main focus.
Yes, and
And
your
you're
health.
confronted with
Yeah.
yourself. And it's getting confronted with yourself is tough at the professional level, at the personal level. But we're only the stronger for it. We only get better by really confronting these things.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I remember I had this, so I trained as a bilingual secretary. So everything
Hmm.
I did in English, I did in French. French now is rubbish. Um, but I just, I was the cocky little so and so who thought, oh yes, oh yes. And the Foreign Office were doing the milk rounds at the time, so they kind of came round, and I thought, oh, shoe in, absolute shoe in. And I got called in. We'd gone through the interviews, we'd done everything else, and they actually said, Sam, you're probably one of the least diplomatic people we know. And I said, well, that's awful. And they said, it's just, we, you are so commercial.
Wow.
You are not made for the diplomatic corps. I literally, and I planned my whole life, I was going to go
Yeah.
to this foreign office and this foreign, and I'd done all my research, and I was going to go up through the ranks here, and I was going to do this, and I was going, and that was it. It was completely taken away from me, and I had this real dream about, at that moment in time, right? That moment in time, that's what I thought I'd be, and just that,
Mm.
you're one of the, and I think I took, as you can tell, I took the quite a negative aspect from it. But actually, the bit that I only latterly picked up on was you're exceptionally commercial, and of course, it was a different line of work that they were putting me in, right? And
I
look where
love
we're at today.
I love that. At first, my face gives off a lot, but when you were talking at first, I was like, these guys need a course on giving feedback. But the good thing is that you could really take like take that one thing, the positive out of it,
Yes.
and really use that to really empower yourself and elevate yourself. I think I struggle a bit when I get feedback like that. I get this a lot when I'm interviewing someone and they don't get the job. I'll give them feedback, and in the beginning, people was like, okay, what could I do better? Now I try my best to give them that information before they even ask. Because
Mm.
if you really want to invest in someone, if you really want to empower them, it's okay to give feedback, but also tell them what do you think they could do better, or where
Yeah.
can they get the resources to be better. But
They-
I'm glad it worked out for you. It worked out pretty well for you too. So,
I mean, I
so
can't
that's
complain,
good.
right? But
Yeah, yeah. So that's
I do,
great.
I do have to look back, and I must have. Oh, my face at the time must have been an absolute picture.
Oh.
Chigo, I am God, honestly, you and I are awful when we get talking. We could talk for hours.
Yeah, how much time has it been? Oh wow. Oops.
It's totally fine. So, what would you like to say to anyone watching today who's on the fence about coming to Disrupt HR Dallas?
You should definitely come, and I know like every single person's gonna say this, but for me, I am one of the speakers, and honestly, as much as it's great that I get to speak, I'm there to really learn. There's some amazing speakers, and honestly, the good thing about having events with so many speakers is maybe not everyone will speak to you because of the diversity of speakers and the
Love that.
diversity of experience. You're gonna get something out of this. I'm definitely gonna, whether people like it or not, I am getting some, like Denzel Washington said, I'm leaving here with something. So I will definitely be leaving Disrupt HR with something, learning something. And forget the speakers, the people who are attending, some great people come and attend at these events. I met Sam at an event where we were participants, right? Like we just
Yeah.
happened to meet each other in the hallway or during an open session. So sometimes it's not even about the speakers, even though the speakers are great, but sometimes it's about being in a space where you feel understood and you feel like people share a common experience with you. So that would be my advice. But who am I? It's just Chigo, but that would be my advice.
Well, I think that's brilliant advice. And Chigo, we always ask 3 questions of our
Oh,
guests before we leave. You ready?
always. Let's do it.
Okay, what is your favourite cheese?
So I have been watching Mindability Matters, so I
Oh, you
thought that
know what's
question would come
coming.
up. My favorite cheese, and not many people might have tasted this, is Jbena.
I don't
Jbenit
even know what it
Bilbzar.
is.
It is Maltese goat cheese with peppers. I'm telling you, Sam, if you try this, it will change your perspective on life. It's the type of cheese it is.
Really?
We don't get in the US. My mother, and I'm not trying to put her on blast here, she smuggles it in whenever she visits. I don't know if it's legal or not, but she always gets me some Jbena Bilbzar. Amazing. It's a Maltese cheese. It's traditional. It's got just a bit of pepper on it. It's nice.
Oh, I'm going to have to talk to you afterwards about it and get the spelling for it because yeah, I'm kind
Yeah,
of just going
we need to figure out how to smuggle it out of Malta to more places. Yeah,
need to kind of get it out there.
yeah.
I'd like you to think about some of the TV programs and films you've watched over the last few months, maybe year. What is one particular show that you feel you'll never get those moments of your life back?
Wow. I wasn't ready for this question. I'm gonna need to think on that. I'm gonna need to think. I will never get those moments back. I don't think there's any. Because honestly, I can watch anything. Actually, I can watch anything, and at the end of it, people will be like, "Oh, this movie was horrible." I was like, "Yeah, but you know what? There was something there. There was there was something there." But I can't think of a movie that I'll never get. Oh, you know what? Actually, no. Rewind. I take it all back. Nosferatu, and this is controversial. The recent Nosferatu, I was like, I got a couple of scares, so there were some positives, but I think I just wasted a couple of hours of my time. No
Okay, I'm
offense.
going to
It
make a
won
note of
awards. It won a lot of awards, so don't hate on me. I'm a nice person, but
You
yeah.
are a nice person. I'm going to write that down because, yeah, okay, I will avoid that one. Let's move on to lighter things. Let's just say you're taking your kids to Malta and you're
Hmm.
getting an Airbnb. Obviously, you need to take flotation devices with you. What flotation devices would you take with you and why?
Easy answer. Pink flamingo. No questions about it. I'd be floating on a pink flamingo. Why? Something about pink flamingo is just amazing. Just it's a little flotation device. I'm lying down on it, and it's just pink with a yellow beak, and I can imagine it right now. The best thing
I
ever.
can imagine you on one right now, and I also want one. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I think I'll be doing an Amazon order later.
yeah. Go for it, and let me know. Send me the link because I don't have one, but I need to get one.
I will. I'll be doing this afterwards.
Cool.
Chico, thank you for being such a fabulous guest. And if anyone wants to reach out and talk to you further, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
The best way would be LinkedIn. Chigo Ahunanya. I'm sure it's gonna be my name is gonna be there spelled out for you on the post. And honestly, do reach out. I Some people say reach out. Reach out. I love to get to know new people and learn from people. So please feel free.
He
Send a
genuinely
message.
means it.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who has watched live today and everyone who's watching the recording. And if you're watching this before September 18th and you really want to come hang out with us, come see us in Dallas. We're going to have
Yes,
lots of
please.
fun. We've got happy hours on the Wednesday. We've got Disrupt HR Dallas on the Thursday. Just come hang out, have brilliant conversations like this because you just never know, as Chigo said, who you're going to meet and what you're going to learn.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you for having me, Sam. This has been amazing. I feel like I just had a chat with the coffee. This was amazing.
Great, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Chico, and we'll see you soon.
See
Cue
you
the
soon.
music.